What's up, y'all? Welcome to the video. Today we're going to be wrapping up our survival shooter game, and we're going to be covering a few extra features such as our point system and ammo refill stations. If you aren't caught up with the rest of the series, I recommend you go check out my other videos. In the last video, we left off with our enemy wave logic and have covered many other features in videos before that. With that said, let's just get things rolling with our point system. Alright, so the first thing we're going to want to do is we are going to, for our point system, make a global manager class. And we are going to actually have this inherit from a game instance. So what we're going to do for that is a new C++ class. And all classes, we're going to make this go to game instance. And we're just going to call this global manager. Okay, and once that is loaded, we are going to come into our header here, make a public section. Alright, and for our global manager, this is really all we're going to need to do with it, because all our global manager is really doing is, it is just storing this right here, which is going to be our points, and we're going to be handling our points in other ways, but it's just good to have it in our global manager, because if we reload our level once we die, or if we want to jump levels and have the same amount of points, having that game instance is going to keep it all the same, and it's not going to reset when you jump levels or reload the same level. So you can more easily manage things from there. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to have our points get added once we're either shooting at an enemy or when we're killing an enemy. So back in our weapon component, we're going to add our global manager as an include. So what we are doing here is we are taking our game instance that is from our world, we're casting that to a global manager, and then we're getting the points from there and adding it by 10. So every time we shoot an enemy, we're going to gain 10 points. And we're going to basically do the same thing we did right here, but in the enemy class, when we go to kill an enemy, we're going to add 100 instead. So we're going to go do that real quick. Alright, back in Unreal, for our point system, the last thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to go into our project settings. We're going to go into maps and modes, scroll down, and in our game instance class, we're going to select our global manager class. And then for us to be able to view our points, we're going to have to go and update our HUD and add a link to that, or a binding to that. So if we go back in here, we're going to get our game instance. We're going to cast that to a global manager. And then from there we can get our total points and then turn it into text and hook it up to the manager. So now if we compile this, test it out, we should now be able to see our points when we go to attack our enemies. And as you can see, we shoot it once or twice and we get 20 points. And if we go to kill it, oh, that is because we still have it set to 10 on the kill. So we have to go and change that to 100, but is working. All right, I just changed that back to 100 and compiled it. So now let's test to make sure that that is working. And as you can see, it is working. Alright, and now that we have our point system working, the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to make our ammo refill stations. So this is going to be a class that's just based off of actor, but when we get close to it, we're going to be able to interact with it. And once we do, we're going to spend 1,000 points on that. And that's going to let us fill up our ammo in the middle of the game so that we're not just running out of ammo and then the only thing we can do is just run away from the enemies, because that gets pretty boring and it limits our gameplay. So let's create that class. Call it ammo station and load that up. All right, and now that that is loaded, let's set up our header file. Alright, so looking at our header here, what we added is a include for our survival character, because we are going to need to reference that in our overlap events. So when you overlap with the capsule, the player is going to be able to interact with the ammo station. And so we're going to have to communicate with the player class in order to indicate that. So when they begin overlapping, they'll be able to interact, and when they stop overlapping, they will no longer be able to interact. And for the ammo station itself, we're going to need a mesh to visibly show our ammo station box and the capsule component, of course, for the collisions. So with that, let's get into our player class and start handling our interactions. So when we go to implement our capsule begin overlap and end overlap, we can get those working right away. Now back in our character class, let's go and add our interaction fields. So if we go down here, we're going to add another field that's visible anywhere but blueprint read only, and I'm going to make this a bool can interact, and it's going to be false by default. And then lastly, we're going to have to implement another method for handling these interactions. Alright, now back in our CPP, let's implement our interact method. Okay, so what we are doing in this method is we are making sure that they most definitely can interact. Then we are getting our global manager to get our points. We're checking their points to make sure that they have enough, and if they do, we're going to spend those points and negate them, and then we're going to give the player their new refilled ammo. Another thing to be sure to do is to bind the interact event to a button. So we are going to do that. Alright, and if we go back into Unreal and make this event right here, we should be able to get that working. Alright, now back in Unreal, we are going to go to our project settings, go down to our input, and just like our reload and our other stuff right here, we're going to make another action mapping. We're going to call this interact. And the key that we're going to attach to this is E. Alright, that should be all set. Now before we go and tell our event handlers what to do and actually set up the CPP in our ammo station, we're going to go into our HUD and tell the HUD what to do when the player can interact. So if we go into this blueprint here, we're going to make some new text, and this is going to just be, it's going to go right down under here. And alright, we center that a little bit. So this message is only going to display if the player can interact. So what we are going to do in order to make that work is we're going to bind our color here to our interact. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to make a new color. And we're just gonna make this white, actually, to make a linear color. This is all just going to be ones because we do want it to still be white. And in this alpha channel right here, this is how we're going to control the opacity. We're actually going to get our character and we're going to hook up the boolean to the opacity. So the opacity is going to be at 0 if false, which means that we're not going to be able to see the text. And if it's true at 1, then it'll be at max opacity and we'll be able to see the text. So we're going to get our player character. We're going to cast that to survival, FPS. And here we have our can interact boolean. Convert that into a float. And clean up our blueprints here. And now that should be functional. Now let's go into our ammo station class and implement our event handlers. Alright, and now back in our ammo station CPP, let's start to implement our constructor. Alright, so in our constructor here, we are initializing our mesh. We are initializing our capsule with its initial size as well. And then we are also registering our overlap events. Now, last thing we have to do is just implement these overlap events and then we can go and test things. So looking at our event handlers, these are very simple. We're just getting the actor that it's colliding with, casting it to the player, and then if it is overlapping, we're going to let it interact. And if it's ending the overlap, then it's no longer going to be able to interact with the object because it is no longer in the proximity of that object. So let's go back into Unreal, create a blueprint version of the ammo station, and start testing this out. Alright, now we're going to go over to our ammo station class, and we're going to create a blueprint version of that. Call this BP ammo station, put that right in our blueprints folder. And go to our mesh here. And the static mesh we're going to choose is going to be loot box. Here we go, small loot. And that should be good. And I'm going to drag out our mesh and put it on this little barrel right here. So if we rotate this a little bit. We could go out a little bit more so that that capsule is at least somewhat on the barrel and play close enough. Alright, very good. Now let's test that. And it seems we are now able to get our UI stuff working. Now let's go grab 1,000 points and see if we can get more ammo. Alright, I have racked up about 1,000 points. Now let's see if we can go refill our ammo. And it seems that we were able to redo it. Awesome. Alrighty, now that is going to cover everything for this tutorial, and this is going to cap things off for the survival shooter series. At this point, we now have a decent prototype which can be expanded upon for further content. For example, we could add in new weapons, new enemy types, power-ups, etc., and I'd be happy to make any of these for future videos. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe, and if there's anything you'd like to see me cover in future videos, be sure to let me know in the comments section down below, and I'll see you all in the next video.